And good evening. I'm Jonathan Higgins,
I'm Rich Carlson.
and we are getting ready for a huge show tonight. We're going to be talking about train stations and depots all over New England. So we're
Yeah.
going to be talking about that. We're also going to have a scanner tip. We're going to talk about some portable antennas, and we're also going to look at Rich's archive of photos from the past. So this should be a good show tonight. So sit back and relax. Welcome to all of our viewers this evening that are joining us. If you're joining us for the first time, you'll see in the chat um, comments a couple of posts from us, to subscribe to the newsletter. And also, we have a new blog entry available as well. So definitely check that out as well. So let's dive into this live show, Rich.
Oogie oogie.
So we want to make sure that you stay connected with us. Make sure you subscribe to our newsletter, which is the Trackside Bulletin. It is an e-newsletter that we send out periodically, not every week or not every day. So definitely sign up for that at the website. In the live chat right now, there is a link to it, so you can sign up there as well. We also have our store, which you can support the show. Go to trainaficionado.com and then click on the store link. Also, follow, like, and subscribe to the social media as well, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. While you're here at YouTube, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're new to the broadcast. Definitely do that. So here's tonight's show rundown. We are going to cover a lot tonight. We're going to take a look at some train stations and depots around New England. We're also going to look at the best rail fanning portable scanner antennas. And we're also going to take a look at Rich's photo archive, the EMD GP30s. So he's got a whole bunch of photos of those units. So that's going to be definitely interesting to check out. So let's take a look at tonight's slideshow presentation, shall we? All right. So the first train station that we're looking at is one that I passed a billion times when I was a kid. Was the Taunton Old Colony Railroad Station. You can see here that Taunton, Massachusetts is in southeastern Massachusetts. So it's not too far away from Rhode Island, not too far away from Cape Cod and so on. The station opened in 1866. The end of passenger service was in 1958. And there's supposed to be, eventually, the South Coast Rail Project is going to open up service. Basically, this line is abandoned, and they're supposed to have service coming back to this line at some point. So I posted these two photos, Rich, together, these two slides, because the northeastern station is on the same route. Opened in 1855, closed at the end of right around the end of the 50s, right there at
Yep.
1958. Now, this portion of the line is definitely abandoned. As you can see there, you can look at the platform there over on the top photo there. You can see to the right, the tracks are there, and there's clearly a lot of growth. And same thing on the bottom photo. This is looking the other direction. And basically, the track is present here, but in other spots, it's completely gone. So what this is supposed to be a part of is the South Coast Rail Project is going to be phase 2 of the New Bedford Fall River line. So right now, the MBTA is going to run service down the current Middleborough Lakeville line, and then go on the Middleborough Secondary, and then it will go down to New Bedford Fall River. Eventually, it'll go straight up this route, and you can see on the map there it's green, where you can see the northeastern station. So it's going to be more of a direct shot into Boston. I don't know if this will ever come about because they want to electrify it and do all this other stuff, and it's just going to be quite expensive. Lots of money, Rich. So you probably were familiar with some of the bigger stations in Chicago. So for Massachusetts, this is the biggest station, which is South Station in Boston. It was built in 1899 and then rebuilt in 1950, excuse me, 1985. Now, not totally rebuilt.
Yeah.
Basically, they did a lot of upgrades to it. And you can see here there's Amtrak Acela train 2030 parked at the platform there. And down below, you can see a drawing of the station. So basically, it's a city block corner there where you can see that the top right of the image is basically the interior station,
Yep.
where it kind of looks like almost like a C backwards
Yeah.
C.
It's what they call a stub end station.
Yeah, and there's no connection from north to south station. There's a north station. The MBTA and Amtrak was wanting to, when they were doing the Big Dig project, they wanted to, when they dug up the central artery and they basically put that all underground, they wanted to make another layer of the tunnel for the trains to connect north and south station.
How far are they apart? Are they?
Probably 3 miles, if that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a huge distance. The way that the trains actually go around is they have to go through a back way through Cambridge, and they're able to swap equipment from one end of the city to another,
Yeah.
but it's not a direct shot from station to station. The total tracks is 13 tracks, and basically they're island platforms like most stations are, where there's a track on either side. But there's 13 tracks at this station. Amtrak's regional trains, Amtrak's Acela service, and all the MBTA routes southwest of the Mass Pike. So your old Colony, Middleborough Lakeville, Plymouth and Kingston, eventually the New Bedford Fall River, all those lines basically, come out of South Station,
Yeah.
going into Worcester, going into a whole bunch of other places. Go to the next slide. So this, Rich, was an interesting station that we've seen in the blog. If you follow the Train Aficionado blog, you've seen a blog entry about the Pawtucket Central Falls Station. Now, this station is pretty unique because it's actually over the Northeast Corridor. As you can see, the photograph in the top right, the station is over the right-of-way.
Yep. And that's it doesn't look like they use it much these days. The old one, anyway.
Yeah. So the old station has been abandoned since 1981. So service, basically they haven't seen passenger service at the station, although the passenger trains frequently go underneath the station. Little interesting thing about the photograph here, you can see that there's 2 tracks with the canaries. That's basically the main line for the Northeast Corridor. The track that's in the shadow here, which you can barely see in the photograph just to the left, is actually a part of the Providence-Worcester line, basically runs parallel, and then it finally dumps into the Northeast Corridor. And of course, this station was quite elegant. I mean, there's some videos on YouTube that show what the station looks like now since it's been abandoned for so many years. Basically completely destroyed. At one point, I'm sure it was a beautiful station, but now it's probably at the point where it's not salvageable whatsoever.
Oh, it's been neglected for years, so I'm sure it's trashed in there.
Yeah, and you've had homeless people living in there, and vandals, and things completely destroyed. They are building a brand new station that's up the line. It's going to be the Pawtucket Central Falls Transit Center. It's going to have bus service and train service. For the most part, this is going to be an MBTA station. Amtrak will not stop there. And this is a brand new station for Pawtucket. So as you can see here for Pawtucket, they haven't seen a passenger train stop since 1981. So
So
this will be,
where is the new station going to be in relation to the old one?
it's going to be a couple miles. I'm trying to remember if it's north or south of the station. It's not very far away.
Yeah. And is that all serious graffiti on that station?
Which one?
On the old station, that's all graffiti, right?
Oh, yeah.
The white stuff. Yeah.
Oh,
One of
yeah.
our watchers was asking.
Oh yeah, that is graffiti in there. There's graffiti inside the building as well.
Yeah.
It's a complete mess. I mean, it used to have marble floors in there. Those are probably all scratched and dinged up and
Yeah.
mess. But yeah, you can see the news station here. They're going to have a walkway over the two mainline tracks, and there'll be platforms on each side. And now with the northeast corridor, a lot of the platforms are not at proper level. So
Right.
they have to drop down. If you ride a commuter rail train, most stations, modern stations, it's at proper level.
Right.
But these platforms are at ground level, so they have to flip open the metal
Yeah.
section there and then go down the steps. So it's another thing. It's not handicap friendly. This station will actually be at proper platform level and will be handicap friendly.
Yeah. Raised platform. It's too bad they weren't able to reuse the old station, because that would have been, that would have looked so nice if they were able to refurbish that and use that.
Yeah, I mean, totally. I mean, I really wish they did, but unfortunately, it just sat there for so long, and then I just feel like and unfortunately, the funny thing when I was doing research on the station, there was a movement to save the station to the point where they knocked down some of the building and then they fixed it, and then they even gave that new section a roof job,
Yeah.
and then after that it was nothing.
Yep.
So it's one of those things, you've got certain people that want to save it and certain people that could care less. Now, many of you that are rail fans in New England recognize this place. This is the Palmer Union Station in Palmer, Massachusetts. It's actually a rail camp that's located here. There's actually two of them, one at the Diamond that's on the other side of the building and one that's in this parking lot looking at the Boston the subdivision for CSX. Now, this station opened in 1884 and end of passenger service was in 1947. So this station sat pretty empty for a long time.
Yeah.
The owners of the steaming tender originally had this place signed up for, set up as their antique shop. And then later they converted it into a restaurant. And the restaurant's been booming for years. The food is phenomenal there. It is open Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, but closed on Mondays and Tuesdays, I believe,
Yeah.
off the top of my head. So if you're rolling through Massachusetts along the Matt's Pike, if you're going through around the weekend, definitely this is a place to stop. There is a couple of railroads that actually go through Palmer. Originally, this was the city of 7 railroads, some of which are abandoned, and some of which are still there. What you can see today is you can see 3 active railroads. There's, of course, CSX, the Mass Central Railroad, and there is the New England Central Railroad, and then Amtrak's Lakeshore Limited comes through here. And then at one point, the Vermonter came through here, Amtrak's Vermonter, but they rerouted it, so it's not going through here anymore. But the Lakeshore Limited goes through, and then usually you'll see during the week at least some activity by New England Central, and then of course the Mass Central Railroad.
Yeah, I've watched that webcam a few times. It's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a really cool shot.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Union Station in Palmer. Definitely, if you're looking for a place to rail fan and get some good food, definitely check out the Steaming Tender. Now, this Newton Center station is pretty unique. Originally, this line, which is now the Green Line, used to be a railroad line, so ran into Boston. It was the Charles River Railroad. And then this line was eventually converted into an MBTA light rail line. So basically, the Green Line, the Riverside branch, which is the D line. So this building, um, is dating back to 1891, and then it was converted in 1959 to a light rail station. The station's still the same. It's
Yeah.
just the what's going on the outside of the track is now it's not trains anymore. It's basically subway cars, light
Yeah.
rail subway cars.
T trains.
And the other thing with this station is you're looking at the building at street level here. In order to get to the platform, it is one story down. So basically, we're looking at the second photo is basically the basement of the station. Currently, right now in the station itself, there's a restaurant in there. I'm not too sure the name of it. I've dined in there once. It was pretty good, and for the most part, you can see all the characteristics of the railroad
Yeah.
in the building. So another station that's got a restaurant inside of it, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, you
And
can eat
then,
lunch and watch trains all at the same time.
yeah, yeah, you can watch the Green Line train activity. Hopefully, the Green Line is, for Boston has had its fair share of derailments. So
Yeah.
hopefully, you won't witness one of those. So this one here is down on the Cape. This is the Chatham station in Chatham, Massachusetts. It opened in 1887 and it had a short, very short life.
50 years.
Basically, the
Yeah.
station's passenger service ended in 1939. All the maps that you see here tonight are basically maps that we used from railwaymaps.org. And you can see here this line is all, it's not a solid line. That means that this is abandoned.
Yep.
So there was a branch that basically ran from Yarmouth directly straight to Chatham. So the Chatham branch was the end of the line for this part of the line. And there's the station right there. And they've, of course, made this into a museum, and they've got a caboose out here, so it's really cool to check out. The other, if we're looking at the middle of the screen, you can see that there's a line that goes straight up. Basically, that would go all the way to P-Town. So the right of way would go straight to the tip of Cape Cod. All of this is pretty much abandoned. So anything that's basically east of Yarmouth is abandoned. And most of the right of way going from Yarmouth to P-Town has been converted to a rail trail. So the right of way is still present for the most part, but it's just been, abandoned. I'm not too sure why they abandoned the railroads down the Cape so early. I'm sure there's some history behind it. I didn't have a lot of time to be able to research why. I mean, the level of traffic that is on the Cape, being such a narrow landmass,
Right.
trains this day and age would have been phenomenal service to the Cape because basically all points of the Cape was covered, whether you were going to Hyannis or you were going to Chatham or you were going all the way around to P-Town. You would have been able to have transit. And then if
Yeah.
you're looking at, if we had the larger map of the whole entire Cape Cod, there's even down to Woods Hole and Falmouth. So
Yeah.
basically,
Well,
you
I'm
have,
sure the car took over,
yeah, the car took over, and now people are cursing it. I mean, basically, there's three bridges over the man-made canal, two of
Yeah.
which are automotive, and one is the Cape Cod Railroad Bridge. So this station here, I was able to visit it back in 2006. This project is completely redone. It opened in 1872 and ended service in 1971. It's a part of the Hoosasink Railroad, and they proposed passenger service from Pittsfield, Mass, to Danbury, Connecticut. Hasn't gotten any traction really, but it's supposed to head to Point Sale south to New York's Grand Central Terminal. Now, this station is pretty unique because it's basically right in the middle of a Y, as you can see here. The line basically can go, go around the building. Essentially, the building's right in the middle. Right here, there's a line that's basically right up against the back of the building. It was a short line, and that was abandoned. But the other legs of the Y are there. Now, the leg that's going to the right of your screen doesn't go very much further than that. I believe that portion of the line is abandoned after a certain point. So basically, they kept the Y there to be able to, do train movements, and plus to be able to move the engine. Of course, nowadays we don't have a lot of turntables, so this
Yeah.
is the best way to turn around a train locomotive, so you're not going long hood, for 30, 40, 50, or 100 miles. But this is a really cool station. The reason why it was being rehabbed is at one point there was vandals that broke in, and arsonists basically lit it on fire. So they basically had to restore the station back to its glory. And I believe this station actually had a restaurant as well prior to that fire. And this is someplace I've always wanted to go to, and then they ended up having this fire, and I was never able to go to it. Then when I went back to it, of course, they were restoring it. I believe there's one of those breweries that are now,
Yep.
in there.
Great Falls Brewing Company.
Yeah.
Yeah. Looks like
Certainly
there's a
will.
museum in there too, right?
I'm not sure. I haven't been back there. I wouldn't be surprised, but yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
certainly, this was, back in 2006, so a lot has changed since then. So this is another unique station, which is the Clinton Union Station in Clinton, Massachusetts. And this is at a junction of two railroad lines. Opened in 1914 and then ended service in 1934. This is another unique station because it's actually two levels. Servicing the Fitchburg Secondary, as it's known today, is the second floor of the station. There would have been a platform there on the first image that's on the top. There would have been a platform there. And then for anybody that was looking to use what's now known as the Worcester Main Line, they would have had to go downstairs at that station. So this station was at a junction of two railroad lines. There's not a diamond here because the Fitchburg line goes over the Worcester line. Pretty unique building. I've seen some photographs of some of the stores that are actually in the building, and it still looks pretty decent. I'm not too sure what the second floor looks like. It doesn't look like there's anybody occupying that, but you can.
Yeah, it looks like it's all boarded up upstairs, but downstairs you still got some retail stuff. Huh?
Yeah, you still get some retail stuff, and there's of course the graffiti that's on the it's on the side
Yeah,
there.
it's ubiquitous these days, unfortunately.
So that's kind of a quick tour of New England. Basically, what I did is I went through my photos and kind of found some train stations that we can show off. So there's tons of stations there. They've been repurposed. Some of them are just left to rot away, which is really sad. But hopefully, some of these stations will be restored. So many of you out there use scanners like Rich and I, and a lot of times you're using just the rubber duck antenna that comes with the scanner. It works okay. But, as Rich and I have talked about during our Scanner Guys show, a single band antenna works better on a particular system, especially with railroads. They're just on the VHF, the 160 megahertz. So when you get an antenna that's tuned to that band, guess what's going to happen?
It's going to work better.
It certainly is. Rich, this is your typical VHF antenna that you see on even the railroad radios. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And with a 5/8 wave, it's going to be more efficient than these little helical rubber ducks. and it's going to give a lot better performance. And I know you love yours.
Yeah, so there's actually, I've used both of these antennas. So I've used the professional VHF antenna, which is the 150 to 162 megahertz. Works great. It's available out there with BNC and SMA, from what I've seen. And there's another antenna that I've tried out, which Carmen, one of our audience members out there, recommended for us to check out Smiley Antenna. And this antenna is great. I think I have it on my 125 AT. I had to make sure it was the right radio.
We can't go a show without talking about the 125.
Yeah, so this antenna here, it's a rubber duck antenna. It is taller than the standard antenna, which let me grab one of the radio. Okay, so this is the antenna that's in the photograph to the left. So you can see there's quite a height difference in between the two. But this one works really well because it's tuned to the 160 megahertz, centered right on there, so it works really well. The other thing too, you can customize the connection. So basically, they sell the antenna as one thing, and then you purchase your connectors. So if you have an SMA or an N connector, not an N, SMA or a BNC connector, or you've got an SMA reverse,
right?
You can purchase those connectors.
Yep. And guess what I ordered today?
You ordered some of these Smiley antennas.
I sure did. So yeah, I know you talk about so much how much you talk a lot about how well they work. If I can spit out my words today, that I just said the heck with it. I ordered them today, so they should be here in about a week.
Yeah, I mean this. I haven't tried the aviation. They do have an aviation antenna. I know a lot of.
I did order one.
Our aviation enthusiasts as well, so that'll be interesting to see how that works. And I'm sure in an upcoming show, Rich will give his feedback on one of these on our Railfan show about what his thoughts are on this antenna versus the stock antenna.
And just for to make sure everybody understands, we are not getting paid for this review of these antennas. We bought these antennas with our own money, and they were not provided to us, and we are not paid, and this is not an advertisement. It was just, we like these antennas. They work good.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with these, with the Smiley antennas. I mean, it's just one of you guys that recommended Carmen, which is one of our audience members, and he said, you got to try this antenna. So I ended up ordering it. And sure enough, it was a great antenna.
Cool.
But yeah, I mean, if you guys have any suggestions for anything, certainly pass it along. We would love to hear about it and spread the news. If it's going to help us as a Railfanning community, let's spread the wealth. All right, so let's continue on. We're going to go into Rich's photo archive. So what is the big thing about this type of locomotive?
All right, well, the GP30 was introduced in the early 60s. It was an evolutionary locomotive. It means that it was better than the one before, but it wasn't such a huge deal. And as part of the marketing for this, they would have probably called it like the GP22 or something like that because of the 2200 horsepower. But they decided to go to a marketing thing called the GP30 for 30 improvements over the old model. And they were looking for another marketing edge. So they went over to the Auto Stylist Bureau over at GM and had them help design the locomotive. So now you've got this eyebrow above the number boards that extends all the way back to the dynamic brake blisters, and it's a visually striking locomotive. It looks, it's very distinctive looking, and the people that like the GP30 usually like it just because of its appearance. You can tell the difference between a GP30 and just about everything else in an instant. try to tell the difference between a GP9, a GP7, and a GP18. They all look pretty much the same. But a GP30 jumps out to you and said, I'm a GP30 and I look cool. So this is the Northwestern, the Chicago Northwestern number 804. The Northwestern and the Sioux Line bought bunches of GP30s, and they were the only ones that didn't have dynamic brakes. But they still had the blister on, and they were just blanked off. So all the other railroads that bought GP30s did get that dynamic brakes. So here's some more of the Northwestern GP30s. They were really useful for either road traffic or for local traffic. And as they got bumped off of road traffic, they started using them on local traffic, and they worked great. They, the Northwestern had about 40 of them, I think, and they ran the wheels off them. And by the late 80s, they were stored. They were 20, 25 years old by then. And some of them were sold off to a short line called the Fox River Valley Railroad, which was a spin-off from the Northwestern. And they bought a bunch of old Northwestern locomotives, including the 814 that you see here. The Fervor, as they called it, all they did is they put a sticker on the cab on top of the Northwestern sticker that said Fox River Valley Railroad on it. And those stickers didn't last very long. So the CSX out east bought a bunch of them. They were actually bought by the Baltimore and Ohio, and eventually became CSX. They had a whole bunch of them. I think they had close to 100 of them. And these were standard GP30s with dynamic brakes, but otherwise they were pretty much the same as everybody else's GP30s. And the CSX, Baltimore, Ohio, the Chesapeake and Ohio, they were a big four-motor proponent. So they bought a lot of different four-motor locomotives, including the GP30. The Norfolk and Western and the Southern bought these hideous-looking high front hood, high short hood GP30s. The Norfolk and Western and the Southern Railway, they like to run their locomotives long hood first, and they decided that they liked that high short hood as well. Eventually, they got things turned around, so they ran most of their stuff with the short hood first, but they didn't go back and rebuild their locomotives with the low short hoods for the most part, especially on these older ones. It just wasn't worth the money, but they are hideous looking. It just kind of looks like somebody made a mistake on the drawing table. It just doesn't look right. And so this is Norfolk and Western. This was down in Decatur, Illinois, is where I caught these guys. The Sioux Line had kind of a unique twist on their GP30s. They traded in a bunch of Alco locomotives. I think they were FA locomotives. And as such, they used the Alco trucks, the AAR-style trucks. And if you take a look at the trucks, it's got that flat bar on the bottom instead of the angled ones that the EMD trucks have. So they also had the GE traction motors instead of the EMD traction motors. So they were actually very easy to distinguish. And you can also look just above the center O and the big Sioux on the side. There's no grills on those dynamic brake blisters. So like the Northwestern, they did not buy dynamic brakes. They didn't need them in those locomotives. So they still had the housing, but they were just blanked off. Some of the Sioux Line locomotives were then sold to the New Wisconsin Central when they split off in the late 80s. And basically the WC just painted out the big Sioux on the side and put their initials on the cab. Some of them, however, did get repainted. They kept their original Sioux Line numbers, and they did get repainted. And in fact, one of them is in the National Railway Museum in Green Bay, Wisconsin, in Wisconsin Central paint with the Alco trucks and the old Sioux Line number. So you can go and visit it now if you want to.
Wow.
Out west, the Rio Grande also bought a bunch of GP30s. And if you can compare the trucks on this Rio Grande locomotive to the ones on the Sioux line. You can see the difference in the truck, how the trucks look. So these are standard EMB Blomberg trucks, and the other ones were the Alco AAR style trucks. These did have the dynamic brakes, so if you look at the 3015 on the right above the G in the Rio Grande, you can see the grill for the dynamic brake. It's the ventilation fans blow out there to dissipate the heat that's generated when they use the dynamic brakes to help slow the train. And the Rio Grande, by the time I took these pictures in 1990-ish, we're using them for yard switching and local service. They were close to 30 years old, so they weren't being used as mainline road locomotives any longer either. And going back to the east, the Seaboard Coastline bought a bunch of GP30s as well as the L&N had some. And they lasted all the way up into the Seaboard System and Family Line days. That Seaboard Coastline unit, the top one, 1333, that used to say Seaboard Coastline between the two yellow stripes on the side, but as part of the Family Lines and Seaboard System, they painted out the individual railroad names and renumbered a lot of them. These are I caught these in Illinois in a place called Yard Center, which is in the south suburbs of Chicago. The GP30 had a turbocharged V16 prime mover, very similar to the same locomotive that was in the GP20 and the GP35, the same prime mover with 2,250 horsepower. And originally they were sold as road locomotives, and like most locomotives, after they get newer, better, faster, bigger locomotives for the road, they downgrade their old stuff and start using it for local service.
Oh, wow.
And lastly, this is what GP30 looks like in 2022. This was an original Santa Fe unit, and they sold it off to a locomotive vendor, and it was sold several times. This ran on the Coos Bay Railroad up in Oregon. Now this is working in an industrial park in suburban Phoenix, and I just took this picture about a month ago, and you can still see these guys running out there today. It's got the Santa Fe air conditioning on the top, which was an added thing that the Santa Fe put on there. And that's the GP30.
Yeah,
looks like Steve says the CSX still runs GP30s as road slugs. Yes, that's exactly right, Steve. What they've done with the road slugs is they've taken the actual diesel engine out of the locomotive and then backfilled the cavity with concrete for the weight, and they are powering the traction motors from what's called a mother unit, which is a real locomotive, and they rewire it so that they can power both the original locomotive and the slug from the same locomotive, because the locomotive in slow speed service can generate a lot more electricity than it can use by itself. So they share the power with the slug, and it makes things a lot more efficient and provides a lot more pulling power, and you're not wasting two sets of diesel engines. And that's it, my friend. Horn placement. Okay, yeah. Yeah, if we go back to that chassis system one, yeah, that horn is just above the engineer's cab. That's going to be loud. That's why they all wear headsets and earmuffs.
Yeah, so let's we got a couple of slides that we're going to go through, and then we'll kind of talk a little bit about some of your questions.
Look.
Let's load this up right here. And we'll go back. All right, so make sure you stay connected to Train Aficionado. You can follow us on all of our social media, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. And then make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. So make sure you follow, like, and subscribe to our social media. Make sure you check out our Trackside Bulletin, our newsletter. You can sign up for that on our website, trainaficionado.com, and also support the show. Shop our store. You can see there we have all types of things that you can purchase at the store, and those proceeds actually help to keep the show going. So definitely support the show. We don't have a sponsor to our show, so any little things like this can certainly help our show. So definitely do that. We've got a really cool show coming up next week. If you're a fan of both the Scanner Guys and Train Aficionado, and you're part of the scanning community, you'll want to make sure you tune in for this show. It's going to be a P25 Digital Trunking 101. So it's going to be kind of like a class. And Dale Osborne is one of our lead experts. He's going to be talking about digital trunking, how it all works, and then give us some bit of inside information on things that you should consider programming with your scanner. And then definitely he's going to be telling us about make sure you use that search for talk groups as well. So if you're watching us on YouTube, did you know you can watch us on the big screen? If you've got a Roku TV or Apple TV, you can download the YouTube app and watch us right on the TV. So make sure you join us Wednesday, February the 23rd, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific, live right here on YouTube, but on the Scanner Guys channel. Next show for Train Aficionado Live will be Wednesday, March the 2nd, 2022, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. Stay in the know. Make sure you follow, like, and subscribe to our social media, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. And make sure you hit that subscribe button on our channel right now. We are going to be talking about some railroad architecture, basically how a switch, the different things of components of a switch. We'll talk about what a Y is and a whole bunch of other things. So that's going to be a really cool show if you want to learn more about, what's going on there on the tracks. We're going to tell you a little bit more of that. So that should be a great show next month, I should say. So Train Aficionado Live is the first and third Wednesday of every month. And then if you're a fan of the Scanner Guys, that's moved to the second and fourth. So Kurt Schultz mentions there's a lot of people putting TikTok videos of trains, and he follows a lot of them. So that's really neat.
Yeah, my sister's trying to get me into TikTok. She's got a bunch of videos up there, and she's trying to get me with the hook because, there's lots of train videos on there too.
That's funny.
I've been resisting it.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly, you can get stuck in your phone for a long period of time watching all the videos. It looks like Will placed he's got on his order list to purchase the antennas for his 125 AT. I did post both antennas in the show comments. So if you're interested in either one of those, certainly take a look at that as well. I've answered Jim's question. 9 inches is the antenna. And Rich, we do have a question about the GP30B.
Yeah, so the Union Pacific bought a bunch of GP30s without cabs. And I've actually seen them, but unfortunately I wasn't able to find a picture. I'm still sorting through my slide collection on the computer, and I'm only about halfway through. So I know I've got pictures of them someplace. I've seen them, and I've seen a lot of pictures of them online and such, but they actually look better than those Norfolk and Western high hood things. But if you take that high hood locomotive and take the cab out of the picture, that's pretty much what GP30B looks like. And I'm pretty sure it was only the UP that ever bought those.
So here's an interesting comment from Steven, since he's been on the other side actually being in the locomotive, Rich.
Yeah. Yeah, so they had conventional cabs with horns on the top of the cab. And yeah, they got air plugs. And if you've ever, I know you've had some cab rides as well. I rode on Well, I rode on some Wisconsin Central SD45s from Chicago to Fond du Lac, and those things are loud and no air conditioning, like he said. And we had the communication headsets, which blocks out that locomotive noise, because without that, at the end of the day, your ears would be ringing. So yeah, they can get really loud.
Yeah, they appreciated the wide cabs because of the mounting of the horns in the back and the
Yeah.
body. And the cabs were more soundproofed and air conditioned.
Well, yeah, and then now they've got a thing called the isolated cab, and what they do is the cab is kind of like a metal can that's mounted on rubber bumpers, and there's rubber between the cab and the rest of the locomotive, so it kind of insulates the cab from the noise and vibration of the locomotive. I know Conrail had a bunch of those, and I don't know if the railroads are still, if that's still a big thing with the railroads on the newer locomotives. I'm sure it is, but I mean, that seems like a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly is. I mean, it's quite interesting, I mean, you think of, I watched a presentation a couple weeks ago about, transportation in Boston. And, with the early trolleys, the motor person or the operator was on the outside of the trolley, getting hammered with rain,
Yep.
snow. I mean, just to be able to be inside of the physical trolley as things improved upon, um, you know,
Well,
the
that's a fallback to the old stagecoach days. You
yeah,
know,
yeah, the rider was inside the stagecoach, and
yeah,
the
and the
person
driver was
driving.
sitting outside.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, when I was on the fire department, we had an older engine, and the officer and the driver engineer was in the cab, and then we rode either on the back step on one engine, or we had an exposed jump seats on the other engine. So we didn't have indoor seating for the firefighters until around 1990 in our department.
yeah, I mean, this is definitely a key thing where
Yeah.
Steven said, trust me, I mean, you do spend a great time in the locomotive. Once the train's built, you're going for hours in there. So comfort's got to be a huge thing.
Oh
And the
yeah.
other thing too, with the length of these trains, when the conductor has to go out and check on something, at least he or she is able to come back to a comfortable cab once they've
Yeah.
walked a mile or 2 miles, because these
Yeah.
trains are super
Oh
huge.
yeah, PSR and everything these days. And you're never going to have that hot axle at axle number 16. It's going to be at axle number 452.
Yeah, it's going to be way, way far away.
Yeah, I've given crews a ride several times when they had an issue. I had one guy years ago. He broke a knuckle on a coupler, and train separated. And of course, it went in emergency and stopped. And I happened to be there. I heard the brakes hiss, and I kind of drove up and I saw what happened. And I drove up to the locomotive, and the guy was getting down, and I can see him trudging. I said, about 50 cars back, you broke a knuckle. And I said, hop in, I'll give you a ride. So he went and off the locomotive and grabbed the spare knuckle and some tools, put him in the back of my SUV, and we drove half a mile down the road instead of him having to lug in that huge metal
Yeah.
knuckle. God knows how much that stuff weighs.
Yeah,
And he
plus
was
the
very
tool.
appreciative of that.
Yeah, because that really, I mean, like you said, it's never going to happen, a couple cars back. It's going to
Yep.
be way, way far away.
Yeah.
We've gotten this question a lot because
Yeah.
a lot of people have a high-end digital scanner, such as the SDS 100. So they use it, of course, for their public safety, but they also use it for their hobby portion of it, like railfanning, and the performance on the railroad bands.
It's okay. Nothing really to write home about.
I mean, it's not worth buying the SDS for railroads.
Yeah, buy it for your, if you've got digital, especially if you've got digital simulcast. if you're only going to use it for rail fanning, for the price of one SDS 100, you can get half a dozen 125s.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, the amount of money you're spending on it, you can buy a higher end antenna, a
Yeah.
carrying case, and you'll be still nowhere at the cost of the SDS.
Yeah. 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 But yeah, like I say, if you can only have one scanner and you've got digital, get the SDS, and you can use that for rail fanning. But if all you're doing is rail fanning, save your money and get a 125. It's just ideal for rail fanning.
The other thing too is if you're able, let's say you do have the SDS and you do end up saving some money. The great thing about having a radio that's dedicated to the railroads, there's no switching favorites lists or banks or whatever it is. You grab your radio and go. You know that this radio is programmed for the railroads. You grab it and you just go. So it looks like a couple of people have commented, and it looks like one of those knuckles can range from 80 to 85 pounds. 80 to 85 pounds.
Yeah, and you can imagine having to carry that back. And Steve said usually the engineer will drop the knuckle on the ground and then pull the train up, because no way you're going to haul that knuckle. But like I say, I happened to be right there, and I saw him grabbing it off the back of the locomotive. And hop in, toss it in the back, and off we go. So, yeah, it's signal maintainers. So, if there is a railroad employee in the area when you have a train that busts a knuckle, gets separated like that, they're going to go over and help you, because you're going to need to get back and forth. You're going to haul stuff back and forth. Every once in a while as a rail fan, I'll offer. And if the guy wants, I'll give him a ride. If he doesn't, hey, have a great day.
Yeah, it's just, it's really crazy. I mean, it was an interesting thing when they shut down. A funny story, when I was living in North Carolina, they shut down the Linwood office, the Linwood Yard, excuse me, Linwood Yard. And the tracks are super long. It's a huge yard. So they were manually throwing switches. So rather than walking it, they were using a pickup truck. Go, because they had to throw, switches, the train, they would, because it was just so far away from end to end, because, you would have the signal tower that was there, a switch tower, was doing everything remotely. And then they closed the Linwood Yard, and then they were like, well, we got, they had the secondary yard that's not too far away, the older yard.
Yeah.
And it was too small. So they were running into issues that they had to bring in the big trains and then break them up. And then I heard, on the scanner, somebody in a pickup truck flipping switches because you didn't have anybody in the tower.
There was one of the rail cams out there. I think it was Bella, New Mexico. You can see them driving those ATVs back and forth all the time. So, and you got a big, huge yard where it might be 3 or 4 miles from end to end. Yeah, those ATVs are very happy. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, John, read my mind there, Jonathan. One of our Jonathan friends there. Yeah. So he's probably watching the same camera I was watching.
I was sitting around in four-wheelers.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and that's always the case, with Dale Osborne mentioning.
Yeah.
Knuckles only break when they're crossing, streets, busy streets.
Yeah. And usually during rush hour.
Yeah.
So.
Let's see here. There's another thing about Kenwood is slowly getting in the NX 5000s back in stock.
Yeah, those are the NXDN radios, and they're two-way radios, but you can program them for receive only, and it's a great radio for rail fanning if you don't mind spending the extra money.
Do you know roughly how much those go for, Rich?
I don't, but I'm guessing $500 or $600 or so, at minimum.
I mean, it looks. I just pulled it up on. My other screen just to see. I mean, it looks like a really nice, nice radio. Actually, what I'll do is I'll share the screen so people can actually see what it looks like. Hopefully, the screen sharing works this week. There we go. Yeah, it's working. Perfect. Yeah. You can see right here. There's a portable version and a base mobile version. Look at that. I mean, it looked pretty nice. I mean, they got those colored screens in there.
Yeah, this guy on eBay's got them for $350 a piece. Supposedly they're brand new, so that's not a bad price. I mean, it's cheaper than a like a 325 scanner.
Yeah.
Again, it's only one band, so you're not going to be able to use it for UHF, VHF, and everything else. So
Yeah, but if you're just using this for the railroads, then
yeah,
that's definitely a good thing. And I'm sure the prices have went up because of, the demand, and then of course the supply shortages.
right.
CJG says, it's roughly around $800.
Yeah, I wonder if that was. Oh, you know what? I take that back. That 350 was for the P25 license for it. So no.
Okay, so
Yeah,
I mean,
that makes a little more sense.
You're only going to need for the railroads is basically that NXDN portion of it when and if they do. I mean,
Yeah,
they're not going to. I mean, the only time that I think they would probably go to P25 for whatever reason, it could be the law enforcement end of things, but they may not even bother. They may stick with the NXDN format, and that's for DMR.
yeah,
So, I mean, NXDN is basically the chosen digital format when they do.
yeah. Eventually, when they do, it's going to take a while. All right, so Les has a great question here. He's stumped when he's watching a YouTube channel, Wide World Trains. He mentions after the train goes by that it was CSX IO009 going from Chicago to Montreal. And he's wondering how he knows that. So basically, it's a matter of knowing your area and knowing the train numbers. And a lot of times, if you might hear the train number on the radio, even if you don't, you just might know that, hey, in the early afternoon, a container train going by is going to be IO009, and you can, if you know your area, you'll know that I009 goes from Chicago to Montreal. So the big part of it is just knowing your location, knowing your territory.
Yeah, and that was the thing when the Linwood Yard was open. I knew that certain trains originated from the Linwood Yard, and they usually would leave on schedule, usually within a 2-hour window. So I knew, I can't remember the train number, but basically it would come out of the Linwood Yard and then go down the S line towards the west, towards Tennessee from where I was at. And I knew, every day or right around, 4 o'clock or right around there, that it was probably a little later than that, probably a little bit later towards 5 o'clock. It would be heading out of there. And then I would listen on the scanner, and and the dispatcher would say, "You guys are ready to go. I got a few trains I got to get past you. Once they're through, I'll let you out." And I knew, that I didn't miss it. I want to say it was 1:35, but I can't remember.
Right.
I mean, they changed it when the Linwood Yard closed. Is there a special way to program NXDN into a P25 325?
Yeah. So if you're programming a trunking system or a conventional system, they operate a little bit differently. So a trunking system, obviously, you're going to have to program it as a trunking system. Look on Radio Reference. When you click on the site name, you're going to see effectively what the site numbers, the channel numbers are. LCN, a lot of people call them LCNs, but that's an EDEX term, but similar in thing. And you have to put those in there properly because otherwise it's not going to work right. If it's a conventional system, you have to set your audio type to either all, which means it'll pick up either digital or analog. But if you set it to digital, make sure that you have either the RAN code in there or set it to RAN search. Because if you don't have the proper RAN code, it operates just like a PL, it may not work properly. So either set it to RAN search or put the proper RAN code if you know what it is. If you don't know what it is, obviously put it to search.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing, going back to, how do people know what the train ID is? Stephen mentions it, and I hear it on certain lines where a train will accrue or approach a certain signal, and they will identify, who they are and what signal they're at. I mean, that's really great because especially for those quiet lines where you don't hear a lot of activity, with the dispatcher and the crew, at least to be able to hear that, that there's a train approaching,
Yeah.
is really
And see,
good.
they don't do that out here. We'll hear the defect detectors, but you won't know what train it is that's going through the defect detector. But the line that I live nearby, they use a thing called track warrant control, which I don't know if they still use that terminology, but same type of thing. So they'll get basically a warrant or permission to operate from here to there. And they used to put the whole thing out over the radio. Train number BNSF 1234 has authority to operate from Glendale to Skull Valley, blah blah blah. Now all that's done either by computer, or in the cab and such. But they will cancel the warrant numbers. So let's say warrant number AB1234 is canceled, or so they'll do that. But they don't put the entire warrant out on the radio any longer, which is unfortunate.
And that's the other thing too. I've heard crews repeat, what they've heard from the detector, and some of them don't. So
Yeah, well, it depends on the railroad. They don't do that here. But they do. They did do that on Conrail. So back when Conrail was still operating, Conrail 55, 59 West, Smithburg detector, no defects. And eventually, after Conrail was split between Norfolk Southern and CSX, they still had to follow the rules in place when they're operating on Conrail track, until they can merge all those rule books together, and they will come up with a single rule book. But until then, they had separate rule books. When you're on Conrail track, you had to do it that way.
yeah, I mean, so there's it looks like there's still track warrant territories on CSX and Norfolk Southern. And I'm
Yeah, but do they put the track warrants out over the radio, or is that all done by computer these days, Stephen?
I haven't heard any of that radio transmissions like that over the radio, so I'm guessing a lot of it's done through the computer.
Right. And like Steve said, calling signals, it's supposed to be a situational check between trains. Yeah, it really doesn't serve much purpose, but other than make sure that the guys are awake. Yeah.
Let's see here. Dale's mentioning about the yard. Most of not all trains ID.
So not all trains are talking to the yard boss before they're going in and out. So Steve says they're going over the radio when he works. So out here apparently they're all done by computer these days, but some areas may not be doing that all by computer. Montana Rail Link puts them out over the radio, and then they get a readback from the train. So some places are still doing the radio. Maybe other places are not. So
yeah, I mean, I haven't heard that much detail over the radio.
Yeah,
so I'm not is that usually happening on the road channel when they do it?
Where when I lived in the Midwest, the Northwestern put all that stuff out on the road channel, and that made those road channels pretty darn busy. And that's why they were separating the road channels out.
I'm sure. I mean, that would definitely. And then depending on the strength of that signal, I mean, you could hear that for quite a distance.
Oh, yeah. Well, when I first started watching trains, the Northwestern had one road channel, 160.89, and they used that on all the lines going in Chicago. And then they got a channel 3, which was another road channel, and now they've got like 5 or 6 different road channels on former Northwestern track in the Chicago area. So radios are getting busier, and they had to break them up.
Yeah, I definitely need to go railfanning where I can hear this. This activity on the radio. I think that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, and some locomotives will use the train symbol on the radio. Others will use the locomotive number. So it's just a matter of the local operating practices.
Yeah, you can see that, mentioning that as well. And sometimes,
see, I used to live by along the Waukesha sub, right where it crossed the Lethen sub. I used to live about a mile south of there, so I'd ride my bike up to Lethen Crossing, and you had and it was pretty busy up there.
Les asking, is this something up in Canada?
It could be. I've not seen that here.
Yeah, 'cause
It could be maybe they're
basically,
using a different kind of light where it maybe looks orange.
yeah, because it's red down here.
Yeah. Well, I know he's in the Toronto area, so maybe they do something a little bit different up there.
Yeah, so that's oh yeah. So basically, track warrants are for those lines that are not so busy.
Yeah. So yeah, track warrant is made for is intended for tracks that are not the big, busy, huge main line. It's the kind of the secondary mains. The Northwestern used it on their secondary main, which was the Chicago to Milwaukee line. I think the big main line out west, the one the Geneva sub, was all CTC. So it was all by signal indication.
Oh, yeah, Dale is watching this line.
Yeah.
It's going to be taken over by BNSF. The
Yeah.
radio traffic changed over.
Yeah, we talked about that a couple shows ago about the big railroads taking over their spinoffs. So
Yeah. What the craziest thing is I was living in North Carolina, and I was in both CSX and Norfolk Southern Territory. And now that CSX is dispatched out of Jacksonville, Florida, and Norfolk Southern is dispatched out of Atlanta, Georgia, it cracks me up when I hear a voice that I recognize dispatching up here because I've heard them down there.
yeah, the same guy that was working Raleigh is working Cincy now.
Yeah, I mean that's the funny thing about it is
Yeah.
because they're all in a room and they're all working together, so they could get thrown on, the Cincinnati desk where they could be on the Charlotte desk,
Yeah.
or they could be working both,
Yeah.
depending on what's going on.
Well, I know train crews have to be qualified on the track that they operate on. I imagine the dispatchers also have to be qualified on the tracks that they dispatch. So,
Yeah, well, that's interesting. Well, there's several people that are qualified to work down there than up here too.
yeah, absolutely. So,
Oh yeah, so a lot of people recognize that Dale Osborne is in the house. He'll be live on the show next Wednesday, so he'll be putting on his Scanner Guys hat for that show because he watches both the Train Aficionado show and the Scanner Guys show.
yeah, got to cover up that bald spot. Yeah.
Let's see what else there is. What trains go through Chris Schultz's area?
I think that's mostly CSX and Amtrak. Amtrak owns some of those lines in Michigan.
So Amtrak could be dispatching for some of it.
Yeah, and I'm not
CSX
sure
could be
if they do
dispatching.
their own dispatching or if CSX is doing that dispatching. So, yeah, dispatchers do have to be qualified for their territories. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Steve. So, if they're CSX tracks, they're probably dispatched out of the Jacksonville
Yep.
center. And if it's Amtrak doing their own dispatching, it's probably done out of Philadelphia.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing about it. It
Oh,
depends.
yep. Yeah, so. All right, well, I think that's about it, my friend. Oh,
Yeah.
Les is leaving, so I guess it's time to shut it down.
Time to shut it down. I thank you so much for everybody joining. The show is certainly growing a lot more. That it's on 2 nights each month. The first and third Wednesday of every month. So we're excited. That you guys are watching. Certainly share this with your friends. I mean,
Yep.
a lot of you are able to hang out here each Wednesday night, watch a slideshow presentation, and then talk about what we all love, trains and rail fanning. So more the merrier joining us. What is this? This is a good question here while we sign off. Didn't the dispatchers had to do
Yeah.
a yearly ride along with the crew?
I'm not sure if they do or not, but I mean, especially if the dispatcher's in Atlanta, are you going to send them all the way up to Cincinnati to,
Yeah.
to ride along a train it's up in Cincinnati? So I don't know if they do that on the smaller railroads. I guess they could, but on the big ones, it might be tough. So
Yeah, I'm not too sure. But I thank you so much, everybody, joining us. We're going to have a great show coming up
Yep.
next week, so definitely join us on the scanner guides, which I'll show you in case you joined in late. Let me just pop up the slideshow presentation here. So make sure you stay connected with us. We have our newsletter, the Trackside Bulletin. We don't send emails all the time, but we occasionally do. So definitely sign up for that. Support the show by shopping our store, and of course our social media: Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and of course Instagram. Next week, P25 Trunking 101 with Dale Osborne. He'll be joining us live in virtual studio. So definitely join us Wednesday, February the 23rd, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. And as always, you can watch us on Roku and Apple TV if you download the YouTube app. And of course, you can watch us on any of your tablets or smartphones, whether it's Android or Apple. You can watch us right there as well. And of course, on your desktop computer or Mac, whatever you want to, whatever flavor you want to watch us on, you can watch us. And then, of course, Train Aficionado Live will be back Wednesday, March the 2nd, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. So definitely tune in for that. So we've had a great show tonight. So I thank you so much for joining us. Anything else you want to add before we leave, Rich?
No, I just want to say thanks to Steven for all the help he's had with us tonight.
Really
It was
appreciate
great.
that.
Yeah, it was great to get some answers to the questions that we don't know about.
Yeah, I mean, definitely keep watching because we're learning as well. I mean, like
Yep,
with any hobby, it's a constant learning experience.
absolutely. Yeah, if you're not learning, you're getting stupid.
All right, I'm Jonathan Higgins.
I'm Rich Carlson.
Have a great rest of your evening. We'll talk soon.